So the purpose of this project is to have you think about something that you are, that you believe or suspect, and to have you do some kind of Bayesian analysis of that using Bayes' rule. I'd love for you to take the template, and you can make your own if you want, but if you want to just use what I've already put together, that's entirely fine. So there are three possibilities of three options of what I put together. Use which one seems the most intuitive to you, which one seems to enable you to make the most sense out of this rule, this Bayesian rule. And once again, the rule is at least one permutation of it is the posterior. In other words, the actual probability of something is likelihood times the prior over the marginal. And I'll watch the video to see what those relate to, or just have a look at the template here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you an example of what I'm expecting, or what I'm hoping from you. And I should say, I will do one with specific numbers, and then I'll do one with more, kind of like more estimation, just because I think it can be helpful either way. So you might want to kind of dive into the numbers. You want to do some actual research and find out what the true probabilities are, or at least a strong estimation of the probabilities are in your answer, or not, right? Or you might just want to do a gross estimation that helps you put things into perspective. Okay, so here's what I'll do. And again, watch the video for more examples. There are three other examples I give in the video of the introduction to Bayesian inference. But here's this one. I've noticed that I have a family history of strokes. Right. So here's what I'm going to put in here. Here's my question. Given I have a family history, given my family history, my history of stroke. Let's put it this way. Given history of strokes, given the history, what will I have a stroke? All right. Now you can put this. This is the general question that I'm going to pursue with this within this project. Right. Given my family history of a stroke, will I have a stroke? And now I need to specify that because of the information that's been out there. I did a little bit of research before making this video, and of course, when you are going to put your project together, then make sure that you do some of your own research. Oh, I'll point out here, I've already gone ahead and I've put my sources here. This first one is a CDC's website about stroke facts, and there is a little bit of information about family history there, but also prevalence of strokes, how common it is for people to have a stroke. And then this one, it has to do with family histories more specifically as well. So I got my information from those two sites predominantly. It's also important to, again, you'll see part of the perspective involves finding out how many adults there are in the United States. So incidentally, I looked it up from the Census Bureau's website, and there are 260 million adults in the United States, at least according to the Census Bureau as of 2020. So that'll become important as we do this analysis. All right, now just to clarify the syllogism, given my history, and I'm going to call the history H, there is a possibility that I will have a stroke. And we're talking about this year because most of the data is it's annual data. So in a given year, right? And I'll try to remind us about that as I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to correct these. So given I have a history, I'll put H here. Given I have a family history, and then what are the chances that I will have a stroke? Right? Stroke, not stroke. And you'll see I'm just putting an H over here just for the sake of space. And how about people who don't have a family history? Okay. All right, now I've gone ahead and done some research here. So the number of people who have had a stroke and who have a family history is is 450,000 people. All right, so that's people who had a stroke and family history. Right. Now I want to find out people who have a family history, A, but did not have a stroke, right? A and not S. Right? So that, incidentally, is really all you have to do well, no, who definitely have a family history and don't have a stroke. Oh, let's see. Yeah, let's see. Oh, well, I'll just go ahead and put the number that I calculated. 650 or 65 million. Oops. And if you're working with larger numbers that don't fit, you can feel free to either change the size or just type million or whatever. Okay, now the number of people who have had a stroke but did not have a family history of stroke. That's 350,000. So here you can see altogether the number of people who have had a stroke in the last year. I think the data might be from 2023. Altogether, the number of people who have had a stroke in the United States is about about 800,000 people have had a stroke. All right. How many people have not had a stroke? That's what this column is for. Now we already know that there are 65 million people who have a family history of stroke, but who have not had a stroke this year. And how about the people who have neither had a stroke nor a family history of stroke? That's a lot of people in the United States. And the way I calculated that is, oops, where's my data here? There we go. 194. 400,000. All right, so that's a lot of people. In other words, most people in the United States, oh, and this is all in the United States, most people in the United States have neither had a stroke nor have a family history of stroke. All right, that's most people, but notice there's a significant number of people who have not had a stroke and yet have a family history of stroke, right? That's this column, this area. Okay, so you see how now what we have here is almost like you might remember doing like Punnett squares, right? We've got these 4 categories, and we can enable, so given that I have a family history of stroke, we can find out what the likelihood, what the probability is that I will have a stroke, right? Am I going to be, this year, am I going to be one of those 450,000 people with a family history who has a stroke? Right? All right. Okay, so now to put all of this into perspective, once again, I have to crunch the numbers. Now here's what we do here. With the prior is basically the probability that people have a stroke altogether. So it is this first column right here, you can see, and here's the little visualization here on the right. It's the first column divided by the entire group, right? By the entire group. So the prior here, I actually went ahead and did the math here. My prior is 0.3%. 3%. And you'll notice I tried to color code it just so it's a little clearer. 0.3%. So in other words, and O and B was, what was B? B was a stroke. So in other words, 0.3% of all Americans have had a stroke this year. Right? So, stroke is true in 0.3% of all cases. Right? Okay, that's my prior. So I'm looking at every case, right? How many people? What are the odds that that simply anybody who is an adult has a stroke, regardless of family history, right? So the prior is not considering family history at all. It's not considering this factor. It's only considering whether people have had a stroke or whether they haven't, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So if I say, for example, hey, I have a family history of a stroke. Well, people have strokes even if they don't have a family history, right? And so the prior keeps that in mind, right? People have strokes regardless of whether they have family history. So in general, what percentage of people, of all cases, in all cases, what percentage of people have strokes, right? Okay, now, the next thing we're going to look at is people who have a family history. And we're not going to worry about stroke at all. We're just going to focus on family history in this one. So what percentage of people have a family history of stroke? And this is this row right here. Right? This row right here. You can see the visualization here. It's this row here. So it's the sum of these in this row divided by the entire population of things that I'm looking at. So when I ran that number, okay, it's true. A is true in 25% of all cases. So what this means is that 25% of adults in the United States have a family history of stroke, right? Which is interesting. I mean, it's kind of an alarming number. 25% of the United States has some kind of family history of stroke. Right? Now that is an estimation. You'll see when you do your own research. Oh yeah, try to use reputable sites like CDC is very good. The NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, is a very good resource if you want to learn about or if you're going to use health-related data. Okay, so we've got the prior, we've got the marginal. In other words, we've got all the people who do have a stroke in a given year, and we've got all the people who have a family history of stroke, right? And then we look at the overlap here. Now this is important. Look at the little window here. Here we're going to find out when it's true that people have a stroke, this happens. Then they've got a family history how much of the time, right? So if they have a stroke, how often is it the case that they have a family history, right? H. Oops. Oh, I forgot to. Oops. I went to a different slide on accident. Go back to my work. All right. Oops, and I forgot to update this. Family history is true. Now, if you want, you could change the language a little bit. If I'm saying history is true in 25% of all cases, you could change that up and say 25% of all American adults have a family history. I'll put that. Oops, my computer's running slow because I have a lot of things running right now. Of all American have a history, family history. I'll just put history for now. Family. Ooh, I'm so sorry for the sluggishness of my computer. Shoot. There we go. All right, I want to make sure that I clarify family history. Family history. Okay, family history. Oops. Okay, now the likelihood, right? So really, what I'm saying is when it is the case that somebody has had a stroke, what is the chances that they had a family history? H. I'll just go ahead and put H for brevity. So right, if somebody had a stroke, what are the chances that they had a family history? Okay, and that can be calculated. This is going to be 450,000 out of the total in this column. So 450,000 out of 800,000 altogether, right? So you can run the numbers. This doesn't seem right. What is it like? I'm gonna pause. Which is true. Oh, I might need to recalculate this because. Oh yeah, I need to recalculate this because. All right, so I'll just do it while I'm recording. So basically, I'm going to take 450,000 divided by 800,000. All right, and that's the probability that if somebody had a stroke, that they had a family history of stroke. And I'm calculating this to be 0.56, or let's call it 0.6. Well, no, no, I'm sorry, that's a percentage. So 56% of the time. So 56% altogether. Okay, there we go. Okay, so when stroke is true, history is true 50%, 56% of the time. So basically, if somebody had a stroke, you could say, well, then there's a a reasonable likelihood that they have a family history of stroke. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to need to do this. Now we crunch the numbers, right? We take these numbers and then we can figure out now what is the probability that I will have a stroke this year. All right, so here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the prior, we're going to use Bayes' theorem right here, the Bayes rule, and we're going to take the prior over the marginal, and then we're going to multiply it by the likelihood. That's, at least that's how I'm going to do it. Or I can just take, we'll do it this way. The likelihood, so this is times the prior over the marginal, right? So likelihood, so if somebody had a stroke, the likelihood that they have a family history is 56% of the time. So I'll pull out my calculator. So 56, I'll just do this in percents. And then I'm going to multiply that by 0.3, because it's the prior, and then divided by the marginal, out of the marginal, divided by 25. And again, this is going to give me a percent, so I need to make sure that I maintain the units. Okay, here we go. The probability that I will have a stroke this year is 0.67, if we want to be that specific. We don't necessarily need to. Actually, we shouldn't, because per se. Let's round up to 0.7. So the probability that I will have a stroke this year, so that when a family history is true, stroke is true 0.7 of the time. So in other words, just to keep the language clear, if I have a family history of stroke, I have a 0.7% chance of stroking this year, having a stroke this year. Okay. All right. There we go. And then you can clean it up however you want. Chance of having a stroke this year. Okay. All right. So let's clean that up. Straighten it out. All right. Now, here we go. That's it. So what I've done is, given the fact that I have a family history, will I have a stroke this year? Right? And I did some research, and I found these numbers from reputable sources. I listed my sources down here, and used all these numbers to find out what the likelihood of me having a stroke this year. Now, this is the numerical way of doing it. I think you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a separate video as a supplement to this one that will use kind of estimations a little bit. All right. So stay tuned. This is the more precise way to do it when you're actually going to crunch the numbers, but and hopefully you have a sense of why these different kinds of probabilities are included in this. But yeah, sometimes it's helpful if you don't necessarily have the numbers ready to hand. Sometimes it can be helpful to just use strong estimations. So that's what I'll do in the next video in the interest of time. Actually, I take that back. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do it now. All right. So if I say most, let me do the pit bulls one, right? So it's from the earlier video, but I'll just very quickly say, right? If I say most pit bulls, is it the case that most pit bulls are deadly, right? Most pit bulls are deadly, right? Well, then here are, I can say, basically I'm saying if something is a pit bull, then it's deadly. Deadly. What about not deadly? And then not pit bull. Okay, so here's how we'll do this. Of the pit bulls that are deadly, right? So really what I'm asking is how many pit bulls, I might estimate, have actually killed people, right? And I might say, well, probably not most pit bulls, but maybe some, right? A few, right? Some, right? Yeah, a few. Okay, well, then that means how many pit bulls are not deadly, right? We might say, you know, most, maybe even almost all, right? Okay, all right, then how about this? Oops, excuse me. How about this? What about What about non-pit bulls that are deadly? Are there dogs that are not pit bulls but that are deadly? Yeah, also, yeah, a few. You can think of some breeds of dog that can also sometimes be violent, right, by nature, right? All right, well, how about the dogs that are not pit bulls and that are not deadly, right? We could say, almost all, right? Nearly all. Nearly all dogs, right? Almost all dogs. By far the most. Okay, well, let's take a look at my prior. So B is deadly, all right? Um, so how many dogs are, prisoner dogs are deadly? I'll just write it down. Overall, um, oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. I'm doing my priors here. Yeah. So how many dogs are deadly? Very few are deadly, right? A few. All right. I'm just going to give it the same color. Now for the marginal. Overall, what percentage of dogs are pit bulls? And there we might say a few, right? Actually, incidentally, about a little over 5%. Right? A few. Few are pit bulls. Right? And all right. Now, I don't know. Here, a few. If we have a few and a few, we still have to recognize that most pit bulls are not deadly, right? So, and this is actually the part where we do likelihood of what percentage of deadly dogs, deadly dogs are pit bulls. Right. And it's actually, let's just maybe for the sake of argument, let's say most deadly dogs are pit bulls. Most deadly dogs are pit bulls. And actually, as it turns out, that's true. Right? Most deadly dogs, most dogs that have killed people, are pit bulls. Right? Okay. All right. There we go. So now, with with Bayes' theorem, we're going to go back to, let's go back to this. We've got the posterior, we're going to take the likelihood times the prior over the marginal. The prior is offset by the marginal. Right? So let's think about the prior, which is how many dogs overall are deadly. That's a few, right? So yeah, well, let's think about this one. A few dogs are deadly. And then the marginal is how many dogs are pit bulls. Right? Not a whole lot of dogs are pit bulls, but most deadly dogs are pit bulls. But only a few of those are deadly. Right? Only a few dogs are deadly. Let's see. Actually, what if I were to change this a little bit? Say very few. It might be a little bit more visually gingerly of me if I were to draw the estimation. Yeah. Well, one thing, yeah. Yeah. Well, a few, like, oops, I was going to change this to very few. Very few. Okay. All right. So one thing you can do is one thing you could do is just sort of intuitively think about the dogs that you've met or you've encountered that are pit bulls, right? And then what you could do is you can actually look up, how many pit bulls have been murderous, right? So the likelihood that, let's say your friend gets a pit bull, what's the chance that this pit bull is going to be deadly, right? Well, only a few dogs in general are pit bull, and very, very few dogs are actually deadly. Actually, I'll share. Of the dog deaths, there seems to be fewer than 100 in the United States every year. But there are you can consider how many pit bulls are there in the United States. There are uh, uh, what is it? A few million. All right, there are a few million pit bulls in the United States. Is that right? Or is it a few 100,000? I can't remember the specific numbers. But it was a large scale, right? So of those million pit bulls, only a few of them, less than 100, are deadly. Right? So putting that into perspective, then it becomes very clear that that very, very, very few pit bulls are actually deadly. Okay, so this would be a very few. Let's say, yeah, very few, very few. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, try to get a sense of. I mean, even if you would rather not, do a lot of number crunching, try to use some reasonable estimations. Have a look at some of the information that's out there, and try to put your initial beliefs into perspective using a template kind of like this. So, effectively, that's what I'm asking you to do for the project. I'm asking you uh, to put together a presentation. It doesn't have to be multiple slides. It could just be one slide. It could just be this one. In fact, what you could do is, and I'll go ahead and do this. You could just remove all these other slides. See what I'm doing on the left? I'm just deleting these other ones, and you just leave this one slide that remains, right? And then you go ahead and save it, and then you can upload it. And there will be a portal for you to upload your presentation there. And that way we can all have a look at your presentation. Now, if you want, you could save it as a PowerPoint show. If you do that as a PowerPoint show, then nobody will be able to edit it. It's just a matter of something that can be scrolled through. I'm not sure exactly where to do that. Okay, but yeah, you could save it that way if you want. Or if you want, you can save it as just straight up PDF. And we can just see all the information there. One of the reasons why you might want to do a PowerPoint show, or it's when you save as PPS. Actually, I'll just go ahead and walk you through the process of what that looks like. Go to Save As, and then you're going to click on this drop-down menu, and if you go down to PP, it's going to be PPS, I think. Yeah, here it is, right down here, PowerPoint Show, PPS. Then it'll be something that's only readable. It's just something that could be read, and not necessarily something that it can be edited. But yeah, actually, in fact, I'll put this up as a PowerPoint show, just as an exemplar of what my expectations are. Cool. All right. I hope this has been helpful as an overview of what the expectations are. Again, you have the option. You could either do you could either actually do some number crunching, or you can do some estimating. Either way, try to get a sense of how Bayesian reasoning can help you offset your initial biases or assumptions. Okay. Thanks very much. I really look forward to seeing what you choose to analyze, what beliefs that you choose to test in a Bayesian fashion, and yeah, I will also put up a rubric for the project as well, and you'll see all that information on D2L. Thanks very much. Sorry for the long video, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you a solid overview of what I'm hoping for in the presentations. Thanks. Bye.